some of the concepts that we have already talked about so that you are clear about the connection between the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita and some of the Vedantic concepts that we have talked about, like praptasya praptihi, etc. So the Gita is it's a long text and can be confusing, especially as we will see today. Some of the words are synonyms, and so unless someone is who has already gone through it thoroughly many times, which I have, can connect them all together, it can be confusing. Reading Gita by itself doesn't really do very much. So anyway, so that's what we will do, is to put a interconnection network of concepts with respect to how the Gita is scheduled. So I think today we will do half of it, 1, 2, and 3. It may take more time, we'll see. So we want to make sure that we totally understand that. And if we have some time left over, then we can do some meditation. I'd like to do meditation maybe every 2 or 3 classes. So we'll continue to do that. So that's the agenda for today. So let's start with the very first chapter. So what the first chapter does is to set the stage for the teaching. There is a certain context that has to be given. And the context is that the person who is looking for answers is a good person. This is an important thing. If there is a person who is unethical and even bordering on doing wrong things, criminal and so on, then the Gita really doesn't offer much for that person. You can certainly do some remedial work. You have to serve a prison temp, or whatever it is. Then you can read. But in other words, another thing is that supposing you have a person who is quote unquote not a good person, whatever that means, then Gita is not necessary. What is necessary is that you correct your conduct first and learn to live in a comfortable life with changes in your attitudes and your behavior and so on and so forth. That's what's necessary. So this is what the society is trying to do, is to make sure that you reform people that have a criminal past, either through prison sentences or whatever. So anyway, Gita is not meant for that. So Arjuna, considered to be an ideal student, is chosen to be the subject of the Gita. He is a good and ethical person, but he has a crisis in his life that the battlefield brings out. A good person doesn't mean that he's a happy person. A happy person and a good person are two different people. Even a criminal can be a happy person. But a good person has a better chance of becoming really happy with some issues that they have to resolve in their life. So this is the context. This is a very carefully constructed context. And so here, as it's pretty obvious, that some exaggeration is done in order to bring out the contextual meaning in our life. So for example, life really is a battlefield for all of us, because it's a question of, would I do this, do I do that? Choices are given. And sometimes my own tendencies to cut corners are there. Sometimes I want to behave the right way, sometimes I don't. So it's a battlefield. And so the battle of the Mahabharata was done to accentuate, I wouldn't say exaggerate, but to accentuate it. So it should be seen throughout, as we will see. So Arjuna, being a very accomplished good person, was able to handle the many ups and downs in his life. He was imprisoned by the Kauravas, he fought for things, he was not oblivious to the problems of the conflict. All of that was going on. But there comes a point where he is at an impasse, where he cannot resolve, and it becomes a crisis in his life. And what is the crisis? The crisis is a conflict between the right thing to do and his attachment towards the people that are not doing the right thing. You know, you can visualize this as saying that suppose you have a close family member who has done something very wrong or continues to do things that are wrong, and you know that it should be corrected, but at the same time you feel you're attached to that person. So this is a theme we are going to spend more time on, the problems of attachment. I think I've already told you about the viveka between attachment and love. And so that's the theme that will come up again and again, and we will look into it. But in this context, Arjuna is torn between doing the right thing in terms of dharma, what is called dharma, dharmic actions, and also not being able to do it because he feels very badly about killing the people who are acting adharmically, not dharmically, but also the ones he is very close to. They are the ones who have really brought him up, and they've taught him all of the warfare. He has sat at the very feet of these wise people, and he's now asked to really kill them. And this causes him anguish to a point where he has become non-functional. He's a very accomplished warrior, he's a leader of things and so on, but all of a sudden, faced with this extreme crisis, he really breaks down. He breaks down. It may not happen to us, may happen, may not happen, but certainly a sense of, this is the interesting thing, that a sense of happiness and unhappiness can become very sorrowful. It turns into sorrow. So the word sorrow is a very serious one. You know, when people are depressed, for example, that is a sorrow. Everybody has some ups and downs, and we can deal with our happiness and unhappiness and so on. But if there are some mitigating factors that allow you not to have the answers, you become depressed. What is going to happen in my life? What are we doing? And in some cases, this is a blessing in disguise, as it is in the case of Arjuna. Because to have a crisis allows you to investigate in a very meaningful way, which you never had the chance to do before. Or it can break you down. It's a very delicate kind of a thing. Anyway, in the context of the Bhagavad Gita, here's a situation that this conflict has broken him down. So, This first chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Means a context in which the sorrow, Vishada means sorrow, not just ordinary sukha dukkha, but sorrowful, where he becomes philosophical and he is depressed and he cannot function as a normal human being. This is called Vishada. And so the very name of the first chapter is called, all the chapters are called yoga. Yoga means a means of accomplishing. That's what really the word yoga means. And in here, the sorrowful nature of the crisis acts as a catalyst. So that's why this is also called yoga. Arjuna Vishada Yoga. A yoga concerned with Arjuna's sorrow. So this is the first chapter. And that's really all I'm going to say. You can certainly go into a lot more detail if you're interested in doing so. And I am really remiss, so I need to give you the right kind of Gitas to study, some examples, all of that I will do. Just had a lot of things going on in my life with so much activity that I have to do. So I'm a little late in doing so, but I promise that I've not forgotten about it, and I'll give you some more texts and so on to study. But anyway, this is all I'm going to say about chapter 1. Then the chapters 2 starts. So before I go into the segmentation, chapter 2 is a synopsis of the whole Gita. In fact, chapter 2 and the last chapter, number 18, are both a condensed form of the entire teaching. So, this is interesting. They say that if you're going to give a talk, then the best way, the most effective way to communicate is to first of all tell people what you're going to talk about. Then you talk about it, and in the end you summarize by saying this is what we talked about. These are the three main things. So chapter 2 is what we are going to talk about. This is a condensation of the whole thing. Okay? It's an important chapter, a long, long one, and covers the entire gamut of the teaching. As such, it is segmented into 4 main segments. Okay? The first one, which is verses 1 through 10, is talking about Arjuna's Sharanagati, called Sharanagati. What Sharanagati means, Arjuna submitting to Krishna and becoming his student. So this is an interesting thing. This is not included in the first chapter, as it could have been, but specifically is not. And this forms the basis of the beginning of the teaching. The first chapter is simply context building. Second chapter is about where the teaching begins. And in the beginning of the teaching, the first 10 verses sketch out the following thing, which is a person who is beset with some problems, like depression and so on, needs to get proper help. This is an important thing, because not everybody who is beset with crisis comes out of it successfully. And the more serious the problem is, the more help you need at the proper thing. You need to go to the right doctor. And the act of going to a doctor is a very interesting one, not different from what Arjuna is doing. This is what is called Sharanagati. So Sharanagati means going to a doctor. So when you go to a doctor, if you look at your body posture, it is not like this. Doctor, I just want to see what you say about this. You go there more humbly and you say, by God, I have a problem. And can you please look into that? And you go to a doctor who you think is a good one. You don't go to anybody, not all of the doctors are good, but your thinking is that this is a good one. So when you go there, you essentially submit yourself. I don't know if I told you this or not, but just about 5-6 months ago, I woke up with a terrible pain in my foot and on the side of the foot. And I woke up with it and it would not go away. I thought I had walked too much because I do a lot of walking. So I thought I had, over-exercised and so on. But I tried to, nothing happened. So I finally went to a doctor. And I didn't know who to go to, so I went to a sports specialist in Palo Alto Medical Clinic. And it was so funny. And so this guy, he was a young doctor, about 45, 47, 50 years old, same age as my son. My older son is close to being 50. And so he was studying my history of medicines, what do I take for all these things, blood pressure, this, etc. And then he examined it, and he says, I think I know what it is. So I said, what? He says, it's gout. He said, gout? I've heard of people who are fat and, they drink a lot and they're non-vegetarians. They say that this is the disease of the kings, as they used to say. But I'm okay. So, but he was saying, listen, I am taking a medicine which is very prone to make people, it's a diuretic to keep my blood pressure down. And he says that plus the fact that you had a severe pain in the middle of the night is the perfect symptom. And he was so sure. I said, okay. And he says, there is a medicine that I'll give it to you. And the confirmation that this is gout is that when you take the medicine, it only takes like 48 to 72 hours. This will be completely gone. And if it is not gone, then I may be wrong. It was gone. It was gone. I'm very grateful to him that he solved my problem, but I had to submit myself to him. So Arjuna, in verses number 1 through 10, finally seeks help of Krishna. And he says, Krishna, I am in sad shape. I cannot fight. I cannot do anything. You know them. You know what I'm going through. Can you please help me? I understand. See, Krishna was actually a friend of his. He was a king in his own way. Krishna was a king. He had his own army and his own so on and so forth. But he was well known to be has a strange wisdom about things. And he was, of course, an avatar of Ishvara. And so Arjuna had some idea about the enormous capability of this person. So he was the right person for him to go to. And this is, by the way, just to digress on that for a second before I continue on. So the story has it that Krishna was approached by both sides for help. So Duryodhana, who is the guy that Arjuna is fighting, the leader of the bad people, and Arjuna, the leader of the good people, they both approach Krishna before the battle begins to get his help. They are on the opposite side, but they had such respect for the wisdom of Krishna that they said, we need to get his help. So the story goes that when Krishna he was actually sleeping when they approached him, and Arjuna was on his feet, and Duryodhana was on the other side of his head, which is kind of interesting anyway. So when he woke up, he saw Arjuna first. Then Duryodhana also said this, hello sir. So he says, why have you come? So they said, we both want to seek your help. So Krishna says, listen, all I can do is to do the following. You both approached me. Here's what I will do. I will give my army to one person, and I personally would advise the other person. This is the way I can. It's not like I'm going to divide the army or anything. It is all for a very good reason. This should be understood. This is why I'm making a point. And furthermore, the person that I saw first when I woke up has the first choice. So at this point, Duryodhana was saying, oh my God, my life has ended. Because he had, I don't know how many soldiers he had. But he says, if Arjuna seeks the help of all these soldiers, I'm lost. Arjuna said, I want you. And Duryodhana said, wow, thank God. What a foolish person he is. They both went back very happy. This is the story. So the story should be understood like this. You have a choice. Each one of us has a choice of either taking the help of the world, making more money, becoming more friendly with more people, raising a big family, all those kinds of things, accomplishing, starting a family, starting a company, and so on. It's so interesting. What a different world I live in. Now I go to some of these places and I see these young people, they're 40. I say, how are you doing? What are you doing? He says, I'm the CEO of this company. And by the way, this is my third company. My goodness, they're so busy and very happy that they're accomplished and so on. So one of the things we can do is to take the help of the world. The second thing we can do is to find out who I really am. To seek the help of the self. Krishna is the embodiment of the self. And if we have the wisdom, we will inquire into the reality of the self. I would not go through, I have done enough of, this is a very famous verse which is one of my favorite verses, one of the few ones that I remember offhand. So in Mundaka Upanishad he says, Pariksha lokan karmachitan ayat brahmanahan nasti akritahana kritena tat vijnanartham gurumeva vidachet kshotriyam brahmanishtam. Very important verse. What it says is, you kindly examine everything that you are doing in your life thoroughly and see where it has gotten you. At the end of that, you will discover that this will not lead to total happiness. You then have to go to a guru. Brahmanishta Shotriyam Gurum Eva Bigachet, and ask what is going on. How do I get complete freedom? Because whatever am I doing now has not accomplished a sense of lasting happiness for me. So therefore, going back to this analogy, so Arjuna had both the fortune and the wisdom, you may say, to choose Krishna and not his army. Okay, so that's how it happened. So now, he becomes his student and says with folded hands, you tell me what is wrong with me, what am I going to do? So this is called the Arjuna Sharanagati. Okay? Let me give you all the four. I should have really written down all the four segments first, so I'll describe it quickly and then I go back to describing more detail. The second one is called Jnana Yoga. The third one is called Karma Yoga. And the fourth one is called Moksha. Okay? These are the four segments of the second chapter. And this is the embodiment of the entire teaching. So the entire teaching means, first of all, is seeking intelligently seeking help. Until you do that, nothing happens. You cannot walk in and say, okay, let me see what you've got to see. You're also looking at your, by the way, I'm also looking at my cell phone in the meantime. And you better impress me, otherwise nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. Either you keep looking for some way to have a. This is why I say that is exactly why I say, please come a little closer to me. You need to have trust and respect for the teaching, and not necessarily with me, but the teaching. Yes, there is something here that I need to do. So this is the first one. Then the second one is Jnana Yoga. And so this we will go into in much more detail later on. The yoga of knowledge. Yoga of knowledge means the role of knowledge. See, this is where the praptasya prapti has to be seen. Because if something that you are seeking is very close to you and you don't know it, then you need to know it. And therefore, if the thing is far away from you, you have to do something. So our Acharya Swami Dayanand Ji also used to say this in so many ways. He says, please understand, there is nothing to be done. There is something to be known. This is another way of understanding praptasya prapti. This is why I brought it up very early on, really, is that you can accomplish, if you don't have something clearly and you need to have it, like for example, if you're hungry, you need to have food. This is apraptasya prapti, something that you don't have. But to find a credit card, thinking that it is lost when in fact it is very close to you, is not the same thing as eating. So therefore, Jnana Yoga means the understanding the correct role of knowledge in your quest of happiness. Then the third segment is, so by the way, this then starts with verse number 11. And the teaching starts with verse number 11. Another verse that I have committed to memory. I'm getting old, my memory is failing, but some verses. So he says, Ashocyan anvashochastvam pragyavadam subhashase gatasun agatasun cha nanu sochanti pandita. Starts with an admonition. And he says, Arjuna, you talk like a wise man, but you're blabbering. You don't know what you're talking about. So the teaching starts with an admonition. He says, sit down. So that's the 11th verse of the second chapter, and it goes up to 38. Then he talks all about the Atma, all about the very electricity, how it is different from the appliance. So the whole teaching is summarized in these 28 verses. So this is all called Jnana Yoga. And the Jnana Yoga is to be told first. Remember, we also gone through the stages, stage 1, stage 2. The second stage was where you are given the understanding that it is very close to you. If you don't understand, then you can be searching randomly. But here it was said that it's something very close to you. Just like, for example, in my case, when it dawned on me that I had used it last night on my desk by placing an order for Amazon, wow, my whole attitude changed after that. So similarly, the Jnana Yoga is the method where Krishna tells him, don't you know you are the very source of your happiness. It's not dependent on outside, it is you. This is Swami Dayanandaji's very favorite quotation. He says, you are the problem, you are the solution. A very important one to really understand. Right now we think that the world is the problem. I am not the problem. No. It is always my own attitude that I don't see things the way it should be done. In fact, Swami Viditatmananda, he's very fond of saying this. He says, you know what? The world does you a favor by triggering your inquiry into problems. So exactly the same thing. You are the problem, you are the solution. And so we will go into this in more detail, but I just wanted to give you those important statements. Okay, so this was verse number 11 through 38. Then comes the third segment, which is verses 39 to 53, where the subject matter is Karma Yoga, not Jnana Yoga. And what is meant by that? What it meant for that is that knowledge requires, again I'm repeating myself, I've already talked about this to you before, but repetition in the right methods is important, because repetition means that this is important, otherwise I wouldn't repeat. So what we have said was that there is a peculiar element of understanding, knowledge, gaining knowledge. And what is that? Preparation of eligibility of the student. The eligibility of the student for knowledge is crucial. This is a very important thing that will come up later on also. I'll show it to you, so I won't talk much about it at this point. So Karma Yoga is to improve one's eligibility to understand. And this will come later on. But anyway, just very briefly, there is a segment in the second chapter, because it is obviously covering the whole thing, that talks about Karma Yoga. In fact, I put in a red asterisk there because this is an important focus of the Bhagavad Gita, is the Karma Yoga. How do you increase the eligibility, not increase, but improve the eligibility to understand, as we have talked before. Then the last segment, which is going from verse number 54 to 72, has to do with moksha. Has to do with the attainment of freedom. So this is the result of all of your previous steps that you did. So there it is about what does freedom look like? How does it feel like? How is that possible? Is it possible that I will be, what you call, by an independent, free person, not beset by any problems whatsoever, total? And so this is talked about in a very brief fashion. Later on it will be elaborated on in other chapters, but again, so this is talked about in the very last one. And there, just to give you a quick introduction to the concept of moksha. Moksha is not something that will come later. Moksha has to be defined as now. Now has the only reality. Neither the past nor the future has any reality. And if my sense is that I am limited now, which is the case, I have to examine that, and the present situation has to be re-examined from the standpoint that what is apparently limited is not limited. Our classical example, which we were discussing in the earlier class today also, is that the space is taken to be a room space. So the moksha is not an event that takes place later, but it takes place always now. There is only now. The reality of the self, the reality of you and I is always now. Now. And that now has to be re-examined correctly. This is what moksha really means. Anyway, so that is sketched out in the last segment of the second chapter. And so the second chapter then consists of a submission, an introduction to knowledge, an eligibility of how to, because you don't initially get the knowledge. If somebody is given to you, it doesn't, other than the fact that it sort of is impressive, but my attitude still remains the same. How do you then imbibe it so that it becomes clear to you? Is the Karma Yoga. And then what will happen? What is it freedom? What is moksha? What are the symptoms of it? How will I feel? So this is what is called the sthita prajna. So Arjuna, just to give you a commentary, Arjuna asks Krishna, sthita prajnasya ka bhasha, in verse number 54. So we have all seen these realized souls. There are stories about the field who are realized Mahatmas. And so everybody says, oh, he's a realized Mahatma, not an ordinary Mahatma, he's a realized Mahatma. Means that you have completely understood everything, you have realized who Atma is, and so on. So then Arjuna's question is, what does he look like? What does he do during the day? What is his mind like? What does he think about? How does he talk? He says all this. How does he talk? And what does it look like? Who is this realized person? And Arjuna completely disappoints him by saying, the one where he is the person whose desires don't bother him. They are fun for him. They are not serious. He's not serious looking at. He's called a realized person. So Arjuna says, that's not what I asked for. I asked you, what does the person look like? How does he talk? How does he walk? There's a lot of discussion on this point, and he says Krishna knows. It doesn't matter what the person walks like, how he talks, what he looks like. It is all an internal view of the limitedness versus unlimitedness. And after that, in fact, this will come up again in the 3rd chapter. So this is what is called Shrestha Achara. You don't have to do that now, I'll come to that. Shrestha Achara means what happens to a person when you have become totally wise. Is he required to act in a particular way or not? That will be examined in the 3rd chapter. Anyway, for these 4 segments, the chapter 2 is over. Okay, let's go to the 3rd chapter. Oh, by the way, before I go to the 3rd chapter, chapter 2 is called Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga. In fact, there is an H missing. I see that right now. So it's called Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya, this is another one of those things that I was mentioning to you, is a synonym for jnana, knowledge. So it could have been called jnana yoga. So later on, these are just some terminology that is used. Later on, they will be called jnana vijnana yoga. I think that's number 5, if I'm not mistaken. That will come later on. But basically, Sankhya means, is interesting, Sankhya means counting. Sankhya. Sankhya means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is called counting. Sankhya means one which is counted accurately and completely. This is called Sankhya. So here is a very interesting thing. What happens is our self-assessment is incomplete. is incomplete. So if we were asked to come up here and say, please introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself. What will you say? You say some variation like this. I'm 5 feet 9 inches tall. I am 52 years of age. I was born in India, and then I studied this. What are you going to do? You're going to talk about age, your gender, your ethnicity, your education, your accomplishments perhaps, your role, what you do, etc., etc. So the questioner can ask, Krishna can ask, is that it? Are you done? He says, yeah. I may have left a couple of details about, I did my MBA and so on and so forth, but yeah, that's essentially it. Are you not leaving anything out? No, that's it. That's what I did. You are leaving the most important thing in your life from your counting. This is like an inventory. You describe the inventory of who I am. And it's kind of like, this is what we were discussing in the earlier class. It's like asking, let's say you have a necklace. And the necklace consists of many of these interconnecting links like this, one after the other, so on and so forth. And if the necklace had a voice or a consciousness, and you ask the necklace, please describe yourself. And the necklace says, I've got 25 of these interconnecting rings, and I have some rubies inside of that, and then a clip in the back, and so on. Then you say, is that it? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's see. Oh yeah, there is a hanging pendant to it also. I forgot to tell you about that. Okay. Anything else? Should you not say you are the gold? Oh, I don't know. That's obvious, and so on. Should you not say, as a necklace, you are very vulnerable. You can be broken easily. Should you not understand that you can never be broken? Say that you were never born as a gold piece. Gold was already there before the necklace was born. So this is incomplete inventory control. You don't understand the most important thing that is there, which we will talk about in more detail later on. So this is what is called Sankhya. So Sankhya means a complete Sankhya, a complete inventory. Atma is the very basis of all things. Everything else is really just on the surface. The reality of what it is called Atma, the I, the Paramatma. And that you're leaving out? Your behavior in life is all based on superficial things. And the reason that it is based on the superficial things is because you don't know the reality of yourself. If you did, would you even forget about it? No way. So this is why, anyway, I just spent a little bit more detail on this. This is why it is called Sankhya Yoga, because it is jnanam. It means here that it's a complete understanding of who you are. This is where Krishna tells Arjuna, what are you talking about? Killing and being killed and so on, this is ridiculous. That's not who you are. Atma cannot be killed. Space cannot be polluted. Only air can be polluted. Anyway, so that is the jnanam as part of the Sankhya Yoga. So I was just saying that there are many synonyms used in the Gita, and we should really know about which ones of those are. And so by the way, there is a school of thought called Sankhya, which is completely different. There's absolutely ridiculous way of looking at things. They think that the nature is the doer and the Atma is inert. All kinds of funny stuff. This is called Sankhya. And they argue very well and so on and so forth. So this Sankhya is not that Sankhya. It has nothing to do with that. This is just a jnanam, a normal understanding of who we are. With this, chapter 2 is finished. Okay? Let me now go to the last chapter today of discussion. So the chapter 3, which I will come later on, is called Karma Yoga. This is the main chapter where the Karma Yoga section of the second chapter, which we talked about, remember? It was Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and then Moksha, and then before that it was the Arjuna submitting himself and so on. So the Karma Yoga was discussed there. So this is the chapter that really sketches it out very well, as we will see in a minute. And in fact, I think Karma Yoga is the basic theme of the entire Bhagavad Gita. So this is the chapter 3. And it begins with a doubt in Arjuna's mind. So this is a very important thing to see. I think we talked about it last week also. And if you can grasp this part of the Bhagavad Gita, you would really be well informed as to what the reality of the Gita is, which is the following. So in the second chapter, Krishna talked about both Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. Both of them, as we saw. And he praises Jnana Yoga a lot. He says, once you understood, as we said, the Sankhya, once you understood the Atma and so on, you will see a completely new way of looking at things. So he praises Jnana Yoga. And yet, he tells Arjuna, go ahead and fight. You should take care of this battle and go ahead and fight. This confuses Arjuna. He says, aren't you my friend? Aren't you giving me conflicting signals? You are saying Jnana Yoga is the best and you want me to do Karma Yoga? I don't get this. So Krishna is very patient. And here's the situation. It is exactly like saying, in fact, let's just say this. He says, he begins with Arjuna's doubt, which is better, Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga? So why are you impelling me to fight if Jnana Yoga is better? Right? This is his choice. And that's the very first verse of the third chapter. Jyayasi chet karmanaste. Jyayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tatkim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshava. He says that if buddhi is the same as jnanam. That's another synonym. Buddhi and jnanam and sankhya are all the same. He says that if buddhi is better than jayasi, jayasi means it's much better, superior to karma, and then you tell me, please be involved in karma. Why are you doing this? I don't understand this. So this is an important thing in the very subject matter. So Krishna says, better for whom? It's not a thing is better or worse. What is the situation? It is just like asking, is high school better or college better? The question is, where are you suited for? If you are still struggling with basic arithmetic, you cannot go to universities, my dear. You'll be wasted. You won't understand it. It'll be just a blur for you. So, through these terms, through these teachings, the eligibility is sketched out very well. Here Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, I'm amazed that there are all kinds of instructions in our life for do trivial things. You can say how to make money, how to get, not trivial, but relatively straightforward things. Diabetes, type 2 diabetes, how to get to the better. Swami Dayananda used to say, he saw that there was a course offered in a junior college on learning how to throw frisbees. So there was a sport where, I think he was even now there, sort of playing golf, which is expensive and takes a lot of time, and you have the same pleasure. So you throw frisbees and you have to supposed to hit a post. So there is a course on it. Basket weaving, there is a course on it. Swamiji says, I don't understand why there is not a course on how to be happy in your life. Yes, there are courses, but total happiness and so on, there's no real course. So the question is, how do we become eligible for it? So he starts by explaining that, my dear Arjuna, here is the sequence of the connection of karma yoga and moksha. Karma yoga is the process to improve jnana yoga yogyata. Yogyata means for attaining the eligibility for jnana yoga. So he says that really there are two main things that you should be concerned with. I think it's in the, So in the third verse of the third chapter, Krishna gives the answer to the doubt of Arjuna, which is, why are you impelling me to the fight when in fact you've told me that Jnana Yoga is superior? Why? So Krishna answers in the third verse of the third chapter, which says, Loke asmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta mayanagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yogina. This starts a dialogue. In fact, starts with an instruction on the two main elements, not parallel methods, but two elements of gaining moksha. One of them is karma yoga. And the karma yoga is meant to improve the yogyata. Yogyata means the eligibility, the suitability of jnana yoga. So from karma yoga, you have to go to jnana yoga. Jnana yoga is to improve the eligibility of knowing the self. Fine-tuning. It's a very interesting thing. It's the more subtle the thing that you have to get, the instruments also have to be made very subtle and steady. I don't know if you, I remember when I think I was about 10 or 11 years old, I was in New Delhi visiting my uncle. I still remember this. This thought comes to me at this point. And so I had an older cousin, about 3 or 4 years older. He was 14 or so. Ajay was his name. So Ajay said to me, he says, have you ever looked at the craters on the moon? I was 11 years old. I was living in a small town, kind of like not a village, but a very much smaller town. Never really had. So I said, no, I didn't even know there were craters on the moon. He says, yep. You want to see them? I said, sure. He said, okay, let me bring out binocular, because you cannot see the craters without binoculars. He says, my dad has a very powerful binoculars, and so I still remember it was a cool night, and he put on this outside a kind of like a sheet and a pillow, and he says, okay, lie down and put through these binoculars and just stare at the moon. So I said, okay. So I started doing that. And what happens is that if you're looking at through a powerful binoculars, the moon quickly slips by, and you're trying to focus on it and you cannot do it. So I said, Ajay, I can't see anything. He says, okay, I tell you what, I'm going to hold it for you. And you tell me, and we have to slowly bring it down to a view. And when you do that, don't move. Don't move your hands, because otherwise the whole thing just moves. And now just focus the eyepieces. Then you see it very clearly. I still remember that. So that's the first time I saw, and you say, wow. And what it means is that if the instrument is not subtle enough, you cannot see it with the eyes. Instrument has to be held steady. So really the experience, if I can say that, of understanding the Atma requires some preparation, some training. Because otherwise we miss it. We are the Atma, but we don't know what we're talking about. So Karma Yoga leads to Jnana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga leads to Jnana Prapti, a clear understanding of who I am, where did I come from, where am I going. All of that has been uninquired into, hasn't been looked into at all. That leads to moksha. So Krishna wants to communicate this to Arjuna. And therein lies the dialogue. Because Arjuna's mindset is that life has become a burden for me. I don't want to fight this. I want to escape it, go to some mountain cave and just meditate. And Krishna says, it will not work, my dear. It will not work, I'm telling you. First couple of days you will feel good. Your entire thinking is based on this war. And your mind will not let you be escaping from it. It's not going to work. You have to slowly do it. This is the formation of the Bhagavad Gita and so on and so forth. So this is the crux of it here. So now to summarize, chapter 3 has 3 segments. By the way, these segmentations, etc., I borrowed from Swami Paramarthananda. And I think that he's the one that is most clearly delineated them. Very nicely done. I kind of generally knew that, but I think the way he has clearly segmented that has been very useful. So I pay my respects to him. I'm borrowing all these ideas from him. So the first one, verse number 1 to 20, is going into the details of what Karma Yoga really is. And so there, for example, just to give you a very quick summary of this, and I'm also running out of time, I want to finish this today. There are 2 words. One is karma and one is yoga. Karma means what to do. And yoga means with what attitude to do. So for instance, I don't know if I'd go this, no, I didn't go through in the details, so I'm just going to just give you verbal. So for example, in Karma Yoga, it is talked about that please do things that are ethical, legitimate, and also do things that calm you down. They are also meant for benefiting a lot of people, not just in you. Don't be very selfish. So these are the kind of steps that it goes through. This is what is called Nishkama Karma. Nishkama Karma means charitable work. He says this is very good for you because you should take the focus away from your own ego and really share more with people and so on. So this is called Nishkama Karma. Then comes Sakama Karma. Sakama Karma means that also with your own desires. It's not as though you should not have fun and so on. But have fun in a manner that calms your mind down. I remember there was a satsang where a teenager, she was maybe about 18, 19, an older teenager, was asking Swami Dayanandji. I still remember this so well. She asked him, Swamiji, what kind of things I should be doing to improve my eligibility? Listening to music, and reading books and so on. What do you recommend? Swamiji, his answer was wonderful. He says, I would focus in on classical things to do. Classical music, classical books. Why classical? Because they have withstood the time and they calm your mind down. instead of doing rap music, it is much better to listen to classic and develop a taste for it. This is the part about karma. Then the second word is yoga, which is the attitude. And here, bringing Ishvara, God, into your life is very important. Because you don't realize how helpful to you it really is. You're not alone. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. And your ability to absorb the shocks of life will be much better. It all is part of Karma Yoga. Well, I'm just giving you a very quick summary of that. There's a lot more to be said about it. So this is the first segment of the third chapter called Karma Yoga. Then the second segment happens to be, it has to be said somewhere, and it is said here. It's called Shrestha Achara. And so it's not very relevant to Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, but it's just something that is presented as a sidelight. What it means is, this is very close to the moksha segment of the second chapter, where Arjuna is saying, what does he look like? How does he talk? And so there he says, doesn't matter. In fact, it is now even said that really you do not understand. We all have the concept that the person has to have a long beard and he should be sitting here and he says, hello, my dear, welcome. How can I help you? And he should be calm and he should be majestic. And he cannot really be moving around doing things. This is some kind of a concept we have. This is a realized soul. So this one says no. It's really what the internal view of the person is. He could be active, he could be a householder, it could be retired, doesn't matter anymore, old, young. This is what is called Shrestha Achara. This is discussed in 14 verses in this third chapter. Then the third chapter is Kama Krodha Jaya. Conquest over the wrong actions, wrong desires that lead to anger. So the basis of this is the following, and this is the last thing that I'll talk about. So this is where I try to manage things in my life. So the concept of management, meaning that things occur in my life. If I have a family, then there are family situations that need to be managed. If I have children, then the children have to be managed. If I have a job, then my job has to be managed. Management, that is the thing. And we are used to doing it. We, depending on how experienced or how wise we are, or unwise for that matter, we try to manage the best things the best way we can. This segment says, yes, the management of external things is important. Nothing compared to the management of your own thinking. That is what you should really focus on. You will get much better results given limited time for management. When in fact what happens is that I am so busy in managing external events and things that when things happen in my own mind, I don't really pay much attention to it. The fact that I'm unhappy or I act crazily and so on and so forth, I don't know what else to do. This is the way I am. This can be managed. You refocus on things that are very close to you. Make that as a subject of your management. This is the segment which is talked about. So in some way, it's interesting, in the entire teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, there is a certain main highway that it goes through. And the main highway is, as you said, Karma Yoga, then Jnana Yoga, then that is the main highway. But there are other commentaries that are done which augment the main highway. And this is one of them. Managing your own mind. How to do it. And how much more beneficial this would be compared to your external management is talked about. And this is not the only place that it is done. It is behanded over and over again. From my experience, the same thing is talked about in a much more comprehensive form on the 13th chapter, 7th verse of the 13th chapter. This is called Amanitvam Adambhitvam. There's 20 qualities talked about. Same thing, Kama Krodha Jaya. So here, Krodha means anger. That's not looked about very much. Main thing is Kama. Your expectations, how unreasonable they are, how reasonable they are. That is what he talked about. Krodha is just a frustration of not filling your expectations. So it's not really focused on that much. If you focus on the Kama part, then you're done. The Krodha will automatically happen. Anyway, so this is the third segment, and the chapter 3 is called Karma Yoga, because that is the main theme of the third chapter. So with that, the 3-chapter review is over. And I think that this is the level that I want to do. I wish I had more time. And if you have the time, you can go through either my previous discourses or someone else's. Preferably if you can read Swami Paramarthananda or Swami Dayananji's and so on and so forth. But at least you have an overview of what the chapters consist of. So I'll continue to do that for the next class on number 4, 5, and 6. And perhaps it might take more than one class. But I think with that, we will finish this section before we go to the more details of the 7th chapter, which will begin later on. So with that, I close today's class. I don't think we'll have time for meditation. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadai Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah Hari Om. I'll be happy to take a couple of questions, but I do want to talk about Swami Tattvavidananda Ji's coming visit. So I'll spend some time doing that, but if you had some questions, I'll be happy to answer before that. No questions. So just want to, sorry, did you? Oh.
I just, so I just wanted to know on the Karma Yoga.
Yeah.
Do you essentially go through experiences from your action, you go through the experiences of all your emotion and thereby calibrate?
So you're asking that, do you go through your
Your desires, your
okay, and then
you know,
your emotions, yet, etc.
Yeah.
So what about it? Then you're saying.
So you try to understand yourself by going through those experiences?
In a way, yes. I think that things happen for a reason in our lives. And if we do not understand it fully, then we have unreasonable frustrations that grow up. If we are clear about the rules, about how things happen and so on, then I have a much better acceptance of that. It's kind of like, if you know the rules of the road, that, yellow light means this, red light means this, you drive on the right-hand side, then I'm able to accept the limitations and my mind is calm. But imagine going to a country where there are no rules whatsoever. You can drive anywhere, anytime. You don't know what the rules are. Your mind is going to be questioning and be frustrated at times. So yeah, in a way, what this Karma Yoga means is, and also a big part of that is to understand the role that God plays in your life. Ishvara plays. We are unaware of that. We don't understand it. We have no concept of what Ishvara is. And it's a very important thing that you have. So it's all comes back to incomplete inventorying. You are dealing with things that are not properly inquired into, and you have not really looked into the complete aspect of it. If you do, then our events in life are much more acceptable, much more tolerable, much more understandable. And it's not as though your problem is going to go away in one day, but the progress towards going in the direction will be phenomenal. Because right now, in a way, you don't know, you're kind of like we are lost. You do some things and it seemed to work for a while, but then you're back to square one again. But if you have a direction with instructions, and if you go there, you'll find now there you have to turn left. Then I can accept the problems that can occur because I'm on my way, and there is a progression which is very true. So yeah, so Karma Yoga actually talks about all of that to see how do you recognize. But Karma Yoga without the presence of Ishvara doesn't make any sense, because you need to involve that part of the thing, yeah.
So Ishvara is a common denominator for all these things.
Sure, it's, this is the thing, it's interesting, tomorrow I always do a Diwali puja at my older son's home, which is tomorrow. And ever since his two daughters were born, so, we started with having just a complete ritual only. But every year I elevate what we talk about and so on. And now my older one is going to be 14, granddaughter. The younger one is 12 and a half. So they are now teenagers practically. So I have to think about what to tell them. There are also other kids and so on. But really the theme of the Diwali talk that I give them is that we need to recognize the unseen hand of God, because we can thank our parents. Thank you, Mom, for making dinner. Thank you, Grandma, for keeping me. That one we know. But we don't know who is the one who is making my heart beat, who is making my blood flow. We just don't know that, but it is there. And so you have to recognize, to at least acknowledge, not as though God is waiting for you to thank Him, not for Him, but for you to see the totality of all the things that are influencing you. Either seen or not seen, doesn't matter. So anyway, maybe I'm just talking myself to see how I'm going to approach tomorrow. But it's an interesting, and these adults are all sitting there kind of, so I think tomorrow I'm thinking I might even do a meditation to them. I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, so allow me to spend a few minutes talking about Swami Tattvavedananda. How many of you knew that he was coming? How many of you did not know he was coming? Does everybody know that? So you are on the mailing list and so on and so forth. He's an important person and a very good teacher, and he used to come here very regularly. And then he became so wanted in other areas that he could not come here. And due to a quirk of arranging talks, he has some time. I'm not sure that he will come back again, because I think that from next year again he's going to get all. So this is a unique opportunity, and I really urge you to listen to him as much as possible. So what we're going to do, for 10 evenings, we are going to have talks in the auditorium downstairs from the 11th through the 20th of November, from 7 to 8:15, 8:30. Okay? So this is part of it. Then during lunchtime, midday, actually from a little bit before that, 11 o'clock, 11 to 12:30, we are going to have a talk by him in this classroom, right here. Okay? And we've been discussing, Swamiji and I have been discussing whether he should take a single text for all 9 days of the afternoon or take different topics. I wrote to him saying, it's up to you, but if you want to talk about different topics, I had made some suggestions to him based on what I wanted to do and have not been able to. Can you hear me in the back? Is this off?
Yes, it's off, but we are able to hear it.
Okay, that's better. Yeah, somehow this gets off. Anyway, so I gave him about 8 topics, and lo and behold, he wrote to me and saying, I like that. This is what I'm going to do. So he's going to take about maybe some selection out of those, and he will be talking here from 11 to 12:15, starting on the 12th, starting on Tuesday the 12th. Now, just for your information, these talks will be broadcast just like this, my talks are, live, as well as recorded in YouTube. The evening talks will only be recorded, not broadcast live, because we want to make sure that people are there all the time. And then also we have some time for food to be brought in for Swamiji as Bhiksha. So I'm going to be sending you an email with respect to all of that. And so if you have a chance to spend some time, you can take a meal to his hotel. And he'll be staying at the, what's it called? I always forget the name of it. Larkspur Inn. Larkspur Inn, right, very close by. So anyway, that's his program for that. And a very clear person. And if you have not heard him before, then I think it'll be good for you at least to get acquainted. So the one thing that I would request your help on is that we have all these flyers, both 8.5 and also the 11 by 17. And if you can kindly help out by posting them in any of the places close to you, either in a temple or Indian grocery stores or wherever you think you can, that will be wonderful. That's number one. And secondly, if you have a friend circle that you can pass on, I think you have a copy of the email that I had sent out to you. So I'd very much appreciate if you could let your friend circle also be aware of that. And any other ideas that you may have, I'll be willing to listen. As to in the last class, for example, one of the people said that this neighborhood group, what's it called? Next door. That might be a good way. You can just post one to them. What do you think? Any other ideas for promotion that we should pursue?
Probably it will be helpful to know the exact name of the topics, to put it on next door.
So the topic for the evening one is Ashtavakra Gita. It's a very advanced text. That's already in here.
Okay.
The afternoon topics, I think, are still fluid, and we can, fluid in the sense that Swamiji will choose from amongst whatever he wants to do. So we cannot really say that, but it'll be all based on some Vedantic themes. Like one of the things I suggested to him is to, this last section of third chapter, which is the conquest over your desires and anger, which is given in the 13th chapter, Amanitvam. So that's one of my favorite ones. So I said that if you want, so I think he might take that. Like that, there will be different topics, so we cannot specify. Other thoughts, anything else that... Okay, so kindly please come and take some and